and welcome to today's episode of Control Intelligence. I'm Mike Bacidore, Editor-in-Chief of Control Design, and your host for today's podcast. In this episode, I'm joined by Derrick Stacey, who's the Global Product Manager for ACOPOS 6D and SuperTrak product families at B&R Industrial Automation. We'll be talking about transport and process functions, as well as the distinctions between a platform and a group of products. Over the past few years, some trends have emerged under the Industry 4.0 and IIoT umbrellas. These range from smarter sensors that can be attached throughout the equipment to gather data where previously it just wasn't feasible, to cloud computing solutions for aggregating and analyzing this data to be used for services such as asset performance monitoring, preventive maintenance, and digital twinning. These solutions are rarely core to the equipment, but even without a one-stop shop solution, the driver here is the value these additions bring to the end user through lower unplanned downtime, increased OEE, and other direct operational benefits. B&R has introduced products with features designed to maximize the capabilities of equipment by increasing throughput, efficiency, and flexibility, which is valuable to OEMs and integrators that want to leverage their offerings to end users. Industry often thinks of adaptive systems such as ACOPOS Track and ACOPOS 6D as replacements for traditional motion systems like conveyors or dials. But B&R wants to change this thinking and show the industry that by considering these technologies as the platform to build a system, it will become easier to quantify the value these products bring through their more seamless fit with the data gathering and analysis trends that are driving these Industry 4.0 and Industrial Internet of Things trends. Using ACOPOS Track and ACOPOS 6D provides advanced motion control, integrated process control, and high-quality system data from the heart of the machine without the integration steps of piecing together a custom solution. Derrick Stacey is based out of Atlanta and has been with B&R for the past 9 years. He's spent most of his career focusing on the adoption of mechatronic systems such as ACOPOS Track, SuperTrak, and ACOPOS 6D into the field and educating everyone from controls engineers and plant managers to directors of innovation on how they can benefit from such systems. It started with early digital twins and feasibility studies to fully realize automated lines based on these leading-edge technologies. Derrick is the Global Product Manager for ACOPOS 6D and SuperTrak product families at B&R, and he's supporting equipment designers, integrators, and end users to get the most out of these powerful products. Derrick, welcome.
Thank you, Mike. Appreciate it.
You bet. The automation industry as a whole has always hearing technology suppliers talk about how much faster, better, and more flexible a new product is. So can you explain first to us, how is B&R looking at that a little differently?
Yeah, so we sort of see those statements as sort of incremental improvements. And by no means does B&R think that continuously improving our products and solutions has become unimportant, but rather we need to look at specifically the mechatronics technologies, the track systems, ACOPOS Track, planar systems like ACOPOS 6D, and look at them at what we see that they can offer, more value when we're not simply asking them to be sort of faster and more flexible transport or conveyance. The value that you uncover really comes to sort of a step change when you look at it from a holistic approach of starting a design with these technologies at the core of the machine and the machine line. That's where the real innovation and differentiation is created. Right.
So more. So you're talking more as a total holistic solution rather than just implementing something as a device, say. Is that correct?
Right. So when you say, okay, my motion is 10% faster, you've quantified it and you're like, great, that for me, okay, if I can move 10% more things through my machine, okay, that's a data point at which I can use to say, okay, what does it affect my throughput overall? But it's not just about that, right? Because now there are bigger questions asked of machine builders and integrators from the end user is like, how do I get more data out? How do I anticipate issues? How can you help me run my factory better and make sure my products are better and have more, intelligence around them versus just, 10% more. Yes, that will sell a machine, but it only goes so far to really answer the burning questions.
Right. So then what is the big distinction between, say, a platform instead of just a group of motion products? Is it just the ability to measure throughput, or is there a bigger distinction?
Yes. So, my experience over the last few years of sort of working on educating everybody that I talk to about how to leverage these technologies, often we're sort of dragged into it's just a smarter conveyor sort of conversation. And it operates under the same principles as a servo. So now we start to shift the discussion to, more often than not, motion profiles, RMS current, loop tuning. But all of a sudden now you've sort of put a box around what it brings, because you're just seeing it as purely transportation, right? Using the servo as an analog. But to really see them as a platform sort of all of a sudden changes your thought process, and it can bring the most value, the highest possible value, when used as a sort of a foundational technology, right? These technologies are often designed to bridge the mechanical, electrical controls, and even really digital services needs of the next generation of machines. So when you think of it more as a platform with which, it's the foundation that you build upon, now it's not just, well, how fast does it go and how much current do I get out of it? It's now all of a sudden, what data does it give me? How can it change or improve my overall architecture from a controls perspective? How can I leverage and give more freedom and flexibility for my mechanical designers to be a little bit, to use that sort of cleverness and some of that experience they have, right? Once you sort of take it off the table of, focusing only on timing charts and motion profiles, all of a sudden now that creativity and that engineering juice starts to flow, and you can get something sort of more than the sum of its parts.
Right. Makes perfect sense then, yes. So in terms of ACOPOS, can you explain in a little more detail how, say, ACOPOS Track and ACOPOS 6D merge those varied transport and process functions, say, within OEM equipment, where you're tapping into that creativity?
Yeah, exactly. I just want to reiterate that this is where the fun is, right? Where the creativity, where the designers can really sort of run a little bit more free. I mean, in the simplest use case, right, we take the standard approach, which is, how do we leverage the controlled motion that these transport systems bring to remove external axes of motion from their process, to shrink process station equipment, to simplify it by putting a little bit of that, motion burden on the transport system, because it's more accurate. It's got a better, more controllability than, say, a standard conveyor or an indexing ring. But when we start to look at sort of letting its scope expand, now all of a sudden, you could add sensor data. You can start to do audit trail. You could start to add things without product sensors all over your machine, which eliminates a lot of wiring throughout the whole scope of it. You don't have to have as many product sensors on machines that say need to check at each step, well, okay, what serial number am I working on at what time? That can all be sort of driven into the smarts of the transport system, and now all of a sudden your machine starts to change. Just the shape of it can also be a big change here. Often traditional systems, you're building your equipment around the outside because, again, you've got sort of with constraints. You've got mechanical things that are all filling your space. You've got drivetrains you've got to keep an eye on. Here, because it's sort of self-contained from a motion standpoint, now all of a sudden you can use, say, the volume and height above your system or inside the track space, And now all of a sudden the area that you're using inside of your factory floor becomes maybe a little narrower, a little taller, but that's sort of free space, right? Free volume inside a manufacturing plant. So now you might be able to fit 2 lines where one might have been using a traditional system. So all of a sudden now not only just the per process, design changes, the line design and the layout all of a sudden is like, okay, I've got a whole new dimension for me to take advantage of just by its very nature. And that's really only scratching the surface.
Sure. That's a complete new way of thinking, and in multiple dimensions as well, vertically, not only horizontally. What about the end user industries that are taking advantage of this, at least currently or even in the future? What do you foresee in terms of those industries that are taking advantage of ACOPOS? Which industries are they?
Yeah. And that's a fun one, because rarely can you say, there are similarities in how automotive, consumer electronic, pharmaceutical, cosmetic, food and beverage manufacturers operate. But what's kind of neat is with this technology, they're all starting to use and are currently leveraging in their plants these technologies. So all of a sudden now it really is fairly ubiquitous because of what it brings, right? It is the traceability that you need in industries that use good manufacturing, right? GAMP. You've got ones where the cleanliness or the washdown capabilities need to be utilized. And SuperTrak, being a fully stainless steel product, means that you can leverage it in clean environments, dirty environments, washdown environments. The assembly process steps, right? Again, if you're just trying to use high accuracy positioning plus all of the benefits, now all of the consumer electronics, medical device assembly, automotive, right? All of these things sort of branch across when you look at it from a fundamental problem of how we get the most out of each machine we create or line that we need. And so it's really quite cool that we sort of draw a line across all of these industries.
Right. It seems almost limitless. The timing is always a key differentiator as well, and it's certainly important to discuss just as much the possibilities as the realities of this in a variety of industries. But when would you say these trends that we're talking about can be realized using B&R's platforms? How quickly and how much in the future are you anticipating?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I'd frame it up as, mechanically speaking, everything is there, right? In the end, we've got the products out in the market and people are using them, but we're starting to see people get a much more mature digital strategy, a much more mature understanding of how the edge or how the cloud can benefit operations, right, as a whole. And once you put, these systems in place, you start to design your equipment to sort of lend itself to these connections. What's kind of cool is because the hardware's there and all the data behind it, right? The tracking of wear life, the tracking of friction, the tracking of just how the system itself is operating, and how that then is just a single data point within how the machine's running, how the line is running. Again, a lot of this stuff people are still getting comfortable with, right? I think the IT/OT infrastructure is something everybody's been chasing, and now we're starting to see whole digital platforms and a lot of integrations with AWS and Azure and things like that. People are really dedicated to this. And now it's really, the missing point is just people pushing their machine designers to leverage both ends. So the track systems, ACOPOS 60, ACOPOS track, and the data behind them is there. And now it's just that connection point. So it's really, I see it's going to evolve over the next couple of years for people to stop just using it as a transport system and to use it as that platform. But right now, these products are available for sure. And now it's on the designers to leverage that information, right? That, you leave a good bit on the table when you don't utilize it, and the business case is still there. But I think that's where we're going to start to see sort of step changes in value. Is utilizing that, right? Scraping the system for all that really good core data for how the system's operating, and then pushing that through to the HMI, showing KPIs to operators, passing it up to the edge or the cloud for big data. So a lot of that stuff, I see it as sort of a spectrum, right, on the enterprise level and on the machine level. And now we're slowly bringing that information up from the sensor to the cloud. And these products are going to be key differentiators in that sort of path.
Certainly. So many times new technologies or new devices or new platforms, for that matter, are introduced, sometimes with one intention, and once they're inserted into applications or they're integrated into, say, an end-user system, oftentimes those applications turn out to be something entirely different just because the end user says, you know what, this would work so well in this type of application. Let's try it over here. And all of a sudden you're realizing some new opportunities that sometimes never even appeared on the radar in the first place. But this certainly has the capabilities for endless types of applications with OEMs and with end users, I would say.
Yeah, and we're excited for these next steps because I know for sure that we haven't uncovered everything. And as we put more and more of them into practice, those good questions that come from the end user, right? The people who feel the pain, who feel the benefit, the value directly on their lines, right? They're the ones who tend to ask the great questions that then we and our integrator and OEM partners have to respond to. Absolutely.
And B&R has done a great job of that throughout the years.
Thank you.
Yes. All right. Well, thanks so much. Thanks to all of our listeners today for joining us on Control Intelligence, the podcast for Control Design Magazine. And thanks, of course, to B&R's Derrick Stacey for his insights into transport and process functions as well as platforms. Thanks, Derrick.
Appreciate it.
And if you've enjoyed this episode of Control Intelligence, don't miss our older episodes and subscribe to find new podcasts in the future. You can find our podcast library at controldesign.com or download all episodes via Apple Podcasts or Google Play. Thanks again, Derrick.